And we continue with Mishnah Berurah, Dirshu Yomi. We begin Siman Samoch Gimel today. As we continue the halachos of Kriya Shema, Siman Samoch Gimel, the Machaber entitles, Leishev B'shas Kriya Shema v'lo yishan. That you should sit while saying Kriya Shema and you should not lie down. Apologies that we're still a little bit behind the regular Dirshu schedule, but hopefully we're slowly going to chip away and get back on board. So says the Machaber, you're allowed to read Kriya Shema whether you're riding, you're standing, you're sitting, or you're riding on an animal or sitting. Avol loy parakton, and not when you're lying in your back. That your face is set into the ground, or you're sitting on your backside and you're facing upward. But you're allowed to read it while you're lying on your side. Says the Ramah. This only means, says the Ramah, this doesn't necessarily mean this is the most lechatchila way. It means you're already lying down. And of course, this is very relevant for Kriya Shema al hamita. So it says over here, says the Mishnah Berurah Mahalich, that you are riding, which we'll get to, prakt, and you're lying down. Even if you're rolled a little bit to your side, it's forbidden. It's a gaiva dik away. But the Ramah pointed out to us that if you're already lying down, then you are allowed as long as you're sheikhev al tzidoi. So says the Mishnah Berurah Sefkat and Gimel, shekvar sheikhev ratzaleimar upashet kol ma she'Allah v'ika teirech la'amur lachzul avshad. You're already undressed, and it's a tircha to get redressed. Avalim sheikhev v'chalukai sarich la'amoid. But if you're lying down in your shirt, you have to stand up. Ayin bir halacha. Ve'inu yachal Sefkat and Dalid. Avalim yachal eshabich al sida. If you're able to turn onto your side, I feel rak b'pasuk rishon levad machuyav lasas came kolshkin v'yachli kroiz b'yeshiva. And certainly, if you're able to sit down. So the best would be to stand, if not to sit, and if not at least to move on to your side. Excuse me, I read the Mishnah Berurah before reading the Machaber over here. The Machaber that we just read was going on. If you're Ino Yachal, what does that mean? Says the Machaber. If you're a Baal Basar Harbi, if someone's very heavy, you're sitting then you should turn a little bit, and that's what the Mishnah Berurah is saying, at least for the first pasuk. And over here we're getting a feeling that of course the L'chatchila is to be sitting or standing. If not, you should turn over to your side. And obviously if one is dressed, then the best would be to stand or sit up. Says the Machaber Sif Beis. Someone wants to stand up when he is sitting. So now we find an interesting halacha. This is going to remind us of the Gemara and Brachos, that those who learned Tavyemi all the way to the beginning of the cycle that we learned together, that if someone is purposely trying to say, for me, sitting is not enough, I want to stand up, that is incorrect. Why is that incorrect? Says the Mishnah Berurah Sefkat Misha writes of the halacha kebeis hildas filu dichsevu kumecha ein hakavana ba'amida. Says Mishnah Berurah, you know why? Because we don't paskin that you need to stand. We paskin like Beis Hillel. That what does it mean to bekumecha? It does not mean standing. Kedas Beis Shammai. That's Beis Shammai. El bezmach derech bnei adam lo kun mimitas. And we paskin, as we've said, that what does bekumecha mean? It means at the time that people are getting up. It means that there's a Siman during the day to read it. But that doesn't mean physically that you have to stand. And if you're purposely going and standing, you see, you're sitting and you purposely go and stand, you are showing that you're doing like Beis Shammai. Let's say that's not your kavanah. You never even knew that was the psak of Beis Shammai. You're just getting up because you think it brings you more kavanah. An important halacha, sometimes we see from here, you could be mistaken and end up with an isser. You think you're standing up to do kavana? Well, Lamaisa, you're passing like Beis Shammai, and that is forbidden. Lamaisa, if you did such, you do not have to go back and do a little bit diavad. Sivkat Avav says the Mishnah Berurah lahachmer kosa b'yam shel shomer berg zayin deba b'kamas ibn me'am alf. Mi shamachlam v'nei ram kedavar shamotalikach l'chshayura. So when he's stringent in public, Something that you have to that appears like gaiva minadin oisai when you put him into chayrim v'hainu em oisai adavar pasha eteiru b'chay yisrael if everyone is mekel v'em yodu hashayis l'shem shamayim. But if we know that you're not really being about gaiva, you're doing it for good reasons. Ein minadin oisai, we do not put him into chayrim v'machnem v'nei rabbi v'rabbi mekel minadin oisai put him into chayrim afilu over l'shem shamayim v'afilu meino pasha kol kach la'atir lo yachmer neged divrei rabbi. You should never be machmer front of your rabbi. Unless you have a specific raya, ad kan l'shayni. This Mishnah Berurah is a little bit of a hidden gem, teaching us when it is appropriate to be machmir and when it is not. We continue with Sifkat and Zayin, the Lamai to stand up. Dafka b'zehu to ulcer. Specifically in this scenario, what does that mean? That you're sitting and you go and you stand up. Mishum Shanir Lakol Mishum Chomer Kavi, because it appears. What are you doing? You're standing up specifically for Shema. It looks like you're trying to be machmer, and that's what it's forbidden. I made Yachal Leishi. But if you're already standing, then you're allowed to sit. Azinu near the Mishum Chomer Kav. It doesn't look you're doing Chomer Mishum Tzarach Leishi. You have to sit down. V'dav Kabishachar Zaval Ba'ar V'zein Lahatas Leishi V'kshaymit. But in Ma'ariv and nighttime, you shouldn't specifically sit down. If you're standing, Dinir Kaisika Bei Shamai. Nikra Avaryon, Ktamina Barakira, demand Avara Derabana, and Shari the Mikri Le Avaryan of Soda's Laver, Dinderabon. You'll let a call Marasha Avaryana, Cosvali Rabbi, Shem Marshal, Yom Kippurim, Kuli Alma Maidim, to Shari the Hamo. It says the Amshal Shaiman Yom Kippur. You'll let us stand for Krishma. Veino Isa Misham Yoral, Mitzvasa Bikach. Ratzalaim, what does that mean? Lehadamo Isazam Malachim Yom Kippur. People stand the entire day. You like Malachim, Shanikra Oimdim. But Prima Gadim Iser Gambazeh, and the Prima Gadim says even in that it is forbidden. But just to point out what we just read, that when it comes to Ma'ariv, one has to be careful not to specifically sit down for Kriya Shema, which is sometimes common. Someone's walking in late to shul, so he has to be careful. You don't want to sit down specifically for Kriya Shema at night, because that is the psak of Beis Hillel, but rather either you sit before or after. We continue and we conclude with Sif Gimel. Says the Mechaber Mahalich Baderech V'Ratza Likros Kriya Shema. Someone's going in the road and wants to say Kriya Shema, Sarach Lamed B'Pasuk Kriya Shema. You have to stop by the first pasuk. Says the Mishnah Berurah over here, Sivkot and Tesayim Mahalich. Everyone's wondering, we just learned in Sevalif, it sounds like that you're allowed to say Kriya Shema while you're riding. The best mitzvah is to stand Bishah Pasuk Kriya during the first pasuk. Do Iker Kriya Shema. Because you're not intending so well while you're going, like you are standing. If you read while you are walking, it means to stop. Point out the Mishmur doesn't mean specifically standing. It means to pause in your place. Even and now the Mishmur points out what we just said a moment ago. At nighttime, you're allowed to sit for a Shema. Everyone's wondering, at Ma'ariv, everyone sits. But says Mishmur, it's davka to switch from standing to sitting. If that's the problem. It looks like if you're riding, you're walking, and you pause, and of course a car would be similar. But similar nachin lahachmer. But pasuk Rishon, Baruch Shein Kvo Machzud Lam Va'ed, and the pasuk of Baruch Shein continues the Mishnah Berurah. Pasuk Rishon Uviyish Machrin Alav Avecha, Samar Machar even Alav Avecha, Misham V'Hala Motzi Gros Balicha B'Amida. From Alav Avecha and onward, you're allowed to do either walking or standing. So the Lechatchila would be to stop all the way until Al Liv Avecha. And Mishnah Berurah and Dirshu note number 13 over here points out that El Yerabah says the Kros Kriyasha B'Shasha Eich Dinei Chomer there from one who does not mechavein, so it doesn't look like you're reading Kriya Shema B'derech Harai. So that's the reason why people are wondering every time we mention Kavana, we never mention until Alav Avecha. El Rabbi explains because it's a specifically halacha in riding, because that looks like it's a genai, it's an araidik reading, and that's why we should be more machmir to stop when we're riding all the way until Alav Avecha. We'll pick it up from the next sif, the next year, B'siyata Dishmayu.